Yes, welcome back to the Magic Sponge Podcast, a miracle cure for all your rugby league injury issues. I'm Brien. I'm the guy behind all the NRL Physio content you see on socials. James, footy is back. We had NRL in Vegas today. Round 1 is here, or round 1A is here, mate. Did you enjoy the footy today? And good to be back on the sponge with injuries to talk about that actually mean something.
Absolutely, Brian. It's been a good start to 2025. I enjoyed the Panthers Sharks game. I didn't get a lot of the Canberra Warriors game, but yeah, good to be back on TV. It's a pretty polished product there over in Vegas, given it's only, year 2 going there now. But yeah, good way to start the season, gets everyone keen. There's a lot of sort of glitz and glamour that goes with it as well, and it just adds to the rugby league stories as well. When you got the Canberra boys having a semi-brouhaha over a bed in Vegas, there's nothing like it rugby league, and it's good to have it back, mate. I'm enjoying it again for all the good times.
Mate, was there anything more rugby league than A, like that happening, but B, it being like the lead story on it? Like
Best.
when it first came out, I was like, oh, they've like flogged each other up. This is bad. Like, for the carry on. And then it came like, oh, I've been locked out of my room. I'll wrestle you for yours. Like, come on, man. Like, seriously.
It's so juvenile. It's so good. It's the best. And that's why I love it.
So good. But yeah, look, I think the main thing with Vegas, mate, we got to get there next year or the year after. Anyone out there who wants to sponsor the Magic Sponge to head on over to Vegas, get on the phone. But yeah, look, we'll get straight into it. I think tonight will be pretty straightforward. The main thing I'm sure you're all here for is to hear our team reveal. So SuperCoach, us two SuperCoach experts. But yeah, we'll get to that in SuperCoach Corner. So as always, guys, we're on YouTube. We're everywhere you get your pods. It's your one-stop shop for all things injury analysis. We loop everything back to SuperCoach. Look, let's get into the injury wrap for NRL Vegas, which is brought to you by PainPod, which is drug-free pain relief anyone can use. And use the promo code NRLP for 12% off any PainPod products.
I don't know exactly what he's done. I would have thought it was an ankle, but I'm just guessing.
He shouldn't be out for a long period of time. I mean, I'm no doctor. We have to wait for the scans, obviously, but that'd be more positive than negative.
Vegas injuries to start off with, Brian, before we talk about the other teams that haven't played in this round 0, round 1 sort of fixture yet. So out of Vegas, so Warriors v Raiders, no injuries to report out of this one. Panthers v Sharks, few people listed here that might have a few little SuperCoach implications. Casey McLean was ruled out with concussion in this one. Isaiah Papalii with a facial cut. Brian Toto was ruled out pre-game with a hamstring injury, as was Liam Henry with a shoulder injury. And then the last one, which I think is a good little discussion point, is we were super high on this guy coming into the season from a SuperCoach point of view. But it looks like Nicho Hynes may well be still carrying a groin concern because he didn't goal kick today. And I remember tuning in and seeing Braden Trindle take the tee for the conversion and nearly swearing at my TV screen because I'd really backed Nicho in to do the business this year in my standard setups. So let's go through let's start with Casey McLean, Brian, because we'll finish with Nicho. I think he's probably the one that deserves most of the conversation after this week because there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of SuperCoach enthusiasts that'll be like, what the hell is going on there and why is he not goal kicking? This might have ruined my week.
Yeah, mate. Look, let's start with Casey McLean. Concussion, category 1, 11 days. Quite a few people who have him as well, thankfully, dodged that one. But look, this is probably going to be, well, depending if you had Casey McLean and Metcalf as well. But this is your perfect example of this flex rule coming in with SuperCoach, right? As if you had Casey McLean, early HIA, hopefully his score won't count towards your score for this week. So this is where it's really, I feel like the flex for Classic particularly has worked out well. So 11 days there. They play the Friday night in round 2. So that'd be about 12 days. So he'll still, if everything goes well, it'll just depend on his symptoms. A few people have asked, like, can he travel? So, so soon after a concussion, they'll do all the checks and stuff like that. It's not really contraindicated to travel, provided that, and I say this in inverted commas, it's just a concussion. So if he's got no brain bleed, no facial fractures, anything like that, there's not really any precautions there for a guy to fly with, having had a concussion, provided that he hasn't got any crazy symptoms. So, he should be back, provided that, he's not getting any continuing problems. Papalii came off with a facial cut, went back on all stapled up. The interesting part about this is when he came off, I kind of saw him. I don't know if you saw him, James. He's walking off and like holding his hand was over his. I thought he'd broken his jaw for sure. And funnily enough, I actually had, the connections that you make on socials. I had one of the guys that I know who's a facial surgeon. He messaged me and he's like, that's a broken jaw. He's like, the way he's holding his jaw, it's a broken jaw. And I was like, oh, okay. Look, hearing it from a facial surgeon, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, he went back out there and finished the game. So shows you that, just watching from home isn't always what it's cracked up to be. But he should be fine, provided that there is no fracture there for round 2. To'o with the hamstring, I mean, I'm not sure if you saw the social media footage of him like doing the dance and the jump and the splits. And like my immediate response was, they like, surely they're not real happy about that. And I read an interview with Ivan Cleary and he was like, my heart was in my mouth. Like, what?
Yeah, he didn't look stoked. Yeah, put it that way.
I was like, far, especially the splits, because that obviously puts the hamstring on stretch. So, look, all reports are that he was touch and go for round 1, so he should be right for round 2. The main concern here is the re-injury risk of hamstrings. Obviously, To'o is not someone who I would want to, dance with in SuperCoach sort of for those first 2 weeks after return. Liam Henry, the shoulder, he's right near the end of his rehab, so he should be back in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, Nicho, mate, I think we probably have to eat a little bit of crow. It is only round 1, so I'm not going to throw in the towel just yet because I think, look, at the end of the day, he still scored 50-odd against Penrith in a game where he didn't goal kick. So I think I certainly am not feeling better about Nicho like leaving today than I did going into today. I'm definitely feeling a little bit worse, but I still believe, particularly from the goal kicking standpoint, he has to be dealing with an injury still, I think, at that point, purely because I look at it and I go, well, he took the first kick in the trials and then gave it up to Braden Trindle. I had also heard, I think it was Tim Williams, SuperCoach Playbook, wonderful site. Head on over there if you want any SuperCoach content. He said he was, I think I got tagged on Twitter. Someone was asking a question about, is he going to goal kick? And Tim said, I was there for captain's run. He was goal kicking. So potentially, like with those adductor strains, you can kind of play through them, but they can be a bit roller coastery up and down. So potentially it kind of aggravated there for him a little bit and he didn't feel comfortable. And the thing that stood out to me, I was kind of like, oh, maybe he has lost it, but he only had 3 kicks in general play in this game, which for me stands out as like a surely, and I know Braden Trindle is definitely taking more of a front seat, he's dominating more in this side. But 3 kicks in the entire game for Nicho, I think, is low. Some stats people can tell me otherwise. But yeah, so I assume there is some groin issues still going on there, and particularly with goal kicking, with that across the body kind of motion, that's where the groin is most affected. So that's one where I definitely got it wrong. I thought 2 weeks would be more than enough for him to kind of get on top of that. In terms of will he get the goal kicking back, I think if he's not goal kicking for round 2, I'll be really concerned, because that's then kind of like a month from that first, appearance of it in the trial, 2 weeks to Vegas, and now another 2 weeks till he plays again. If he kind of hasn't, if he hasn't regained the goal kicking by then, they might just be sticking with Braden Trindle. So, yeah, one that we, could have got wrong so far. As I said, not willing to put that down just yet. And in terms of what am I doing with Nicho, and I'll throw to you, being our SuperCoach guy and a big Nicho guy like me, I'm definitely watching and waiting. My approach was I went with Nicho and Cleary, as much as I think the Duffy will be great. I was a bit worried about Jake Clifford being around there, and my concern was if I locked in Duffy and then for whatever reason, and I mean, I expect Duffy to be there, but as we've said, time and time again, and we said it off air, we're relying on Todd Payten to make a decision there, which could be anything. So I was a bit worried locking Duffy into my halfback spot and then getting to next Tuesday and he's not named. That was kind of my concern. So I ended up going Nicho and Cleary, and that way it means I can easily drop down. Like if Nicho's not goal kicking next week and Duffy absolutely kills it in the first 2 weeks, I can just drop down from Nicho to Duffy in week 3, have a bunch of cash to spend, and that's way easier than kind of going the other way. So yeah, mate, I know you went Nicho and Duffy, so a bit of a tough position to be in. How are you feeling about, like, will he get the goal kicking back from your perspective? And then what are your plans with Nicho moving forward?
So I did go without Nathan Cleary, which may well come back to bite me. But anyway, it's only week 1, so we'll see what shakes out for Team List Tuesday next time around. So as you said, yeah, I've got Nicho and Tom Duffy. I guess if Duffy doesn't get named, then I'm probably looking at moving Sendon Smith down from hooker into the half position, freeing up some cash with other guys I haven't played. This is probably a bit of a spoiler, but I've got Tino and Fafita sort of locked into my team. So, there's $1.2 million worth of stuff there that I can rejig around there. So I'll just have to do it that way. It wouldn't be ideal. It would be maybe a early season bed shit from me straight out of the gate. So that would be no surprise to anyone.
Wouldn't be like us, mate, to have one of those.
No, not at all. No. Just part of the course from that point of view. In terms of, do I expect him to get the goal kicking back, mate? I've just got no idea. From all reports, even, like Tim Williams was there watching the captain's run and he watched him goal kick. So, that's pretty good intel there on that front. But yeah, when you look at the numbers, I think Trindle, 15 kicks, 536 meters, Nicho Hynes, 5 kicks, 164 meters. That's pretty evident that there must be a niggle of some description there. I guess they do have the long turnaround. So I guess all we can do is hope that he got through this game without exacerbation or without aggravation, and that he can get the goal kicking tee back, hopefully by round 2. Look, regardless, Brien, I think he put up 50 today. That's still a pass. That's okay. I think there's going to be bigger issues in your team than probably what Nicho put up for you today. Will I drop him after round 2 if he's still not goal kicking and he's still named for round 3? I definitely think about it. It depends what the rest of your team looks like, though. I think you're going to have bigger issues elsewhere to deal with rather than moving out a proven 7. Even if he's not goal kicking by week 3, he may well later on. It's really hard to know, mate, to be honest. Probably a bit too early for a big overreaction hot take at this point in time, I would imagine. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, mate, I completely agree. I think like Cleary scored 68 today. So, and he had the goal kicking. He was in the team that won. He was a lot more involved. So you haven't, like, by you starting with Nicho, I mean, Nicho scored 50. Cleary, you missed out on 18 points today, but you've got 90 grand up your sleeve into. So yeah, I think at the moment, any overreactions, as I said, I'm definitely not feeling better about Nicho out of today.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm not sitting here trying to claim that, but I'm certainly not thinking it's the alarm bells. And especially if it does. Oh, mate, I sent you the video. I lost my mind. And this is where journos, I'm like, I know some people hate SuperCoach and all that kind of stuff, particularly around journos and coaches. But one of the journos asked a question in the post-match presser that was like, oh, just wondering about Nicho and Braden Trindle and the kicking, what's the thought process there? And Fitzy goes, oh, the goal kicking. And I'm like, yes, fantastic.
Perfect. Exactly what we need to know. Yeah.
I'm like, if you write an article, if you're a journalist and you write an article with the headline, will Nicho get the goal kicking back? Coach Craig Fitzgibbon reveals it.
Yeah.
Mate, you will get so many clicks. But anyway, Fitzy's gone, oh, do you mean the goal kicking? And the journalist's gone, oh, nah, mate, I just mean the general play kicking. And I was like, oh my God, you idiot. Ask about the goal kicking. Everyone cares about it. I know it might not, get you some award for the best.
You might get a walk lead, but still, you help out a lot of super coaches.
Just say, or just say, oh yeah, I meant the general play kicking.
Oh, both. Yeah, while you're there.
100%. Tell us about both. Yeah. Oh, I was so filthy. I screen recorded and sent it to you. I was that angry. So yeah, journos, just tell us about the goal kicking. Someone ask about it, please.
Yeah, good call. Righto, we'll update the other teams while we're here, Brien. So we're going to update the Broncos first. So Kotoni Staggs has been ruled out for a decent amount of time with a quad injury, and Jack Gosiewski was a concussion out of the last trial. Any updates on those two players?
Yeah, mate, I think just wanted to mention Kotoni Staggs with a quad because, shows you the shithousery that came particularly out of trials, because I think the Bronx initially said that was just some quad tightness and he was, coming off, and he's obviously got at least like a partial tear there of the quad to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So he'll miss at least the first 2 games. So I think round 3 is the earliest he can conceivably be expected to come back. The interesting thing here is that for whatever reason, mate, and you can talk about the mentality behind this, it looks like he would come back and push Dean Mariner out is the initial, word that Shibasaki, I think Dean Mariner is playing right centre in Broncos training. So that means Shibasaki has locked down the left centre spot. So that currently means Shibasaki is in my SuperCoach team, James, because I want a piece of that Broncos back line with their draw. But yeah, mate. What? I don't even know. I'll just quickly say I wanted to mention Gosiewski is in the concussion protocol, something to look out for because he also could be in a lot of people's sides. I think he's in my side as a placeholder as well at the moment, just as a cheap option, but he could potentially not be there if he's having any delayed symptoms or anything like that. But yeah, mate, I'm sure you're super keen for a Shibasaki Gosiewski left edge for the Bronx.
Yeah. I nearly threw up in my mouth when you said that, Brian, because it's not overly enticing or appealing. Jeez, and the hard thing is with Jack Gos is with the price he's at in SuperCoach, if he's legitimately locked down left edge and their bench looks like there's no edge cover, you probably have to do it. Even if you think, yeah, I'm not happy about it. We see the Warriors boys today. I think Manga had 13 minutes and what was his name? Halasina or Halasina. Halasina was his name? Halasina, yeah, like he only had 20 odd minutes. So like it can go really sideways for those guys at a basement level. So if Jack Goss is getting 60 minutes, 50 minutes, 70 minutes, whole game, that could be actual gold rather than having those Warriors boys. Thankfully, we both dodged the bullet on the Warriors guys today. But I think Jack Goss and Gemet Shibasaki, they're probably as it stands in my teams. And am I happy about it? Definitely not. But this is what you have to do in SuperCoach. You have to sort of make compromises somewhere to get up elsewhere. So I guess that's why we're both looking at it. Hopefully, team lists throw up a few more attractive options, maybe with longer term security. I think Shibasaki's probably, if he's if he's winning the spot out over Mariner, that is wild to me. Like, and I'm the first person to rinse a Broncos coach about making poor selections. Let's be clear about that. And if that did come to fruition, that would be insane to me, given Shibasaki's kicked around New South Wales Cup and Queensland Cup for 5 years, 6 years. I don't know. He hasn't sort of been relevant pretty much ever in the NRL, and he's getting up there in age now, Brian. I know he was red hot coming through the junior grades, and I think he repped Australian schoolboys or Queensland schoolboys twice or 3 times. Like I think he's got the record for like the most appearances there for Queensland combined schoolboys and 18s or something like that, but hasn't really worked out for him at NRL level. So, who knows? There might be, a come from nowhere type thing for Shibasaki, but yeah, we both had them in our setup, so scary times ahead for me and you having those 2 names in our teams. Next one is an interesting one, Brian. We're going to talk about the Bulldogs here and Karl Oloapu. He's no longer with the Bulldogs anymore. People would have noticed the articles come around about him getting, I guess, released from his contract was the terminology I use after that next surgery. He hasn't signed anywhere at this stage, Brian, has he? And I'm disappointed to see that the Finns aren't keen. I thought that would have been a logical fit. Granted, the Finns have had a few long-term injuries recently, so maybe they just don't have the top 30 flexibility to take another one on. But I was surprised about this, given that he is local to the Redcliffe area, and also he was a Wavell High product as well. So I think Simo, who joined us for the Froths and Fades, may have even coached him or schooled him back in the day at Wavell Primary.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Like, I was disappointed too. Don't get me wrong. I think I was all about, because 6 is kind of the area that the Finns are crying out for. So, taking a punt on Oloapu would be exactly, even with the knowledge of his neck injury and stuff like that. Yeah, I'd love the Finns to consider that. But I reckon it comes down to Flegler. Right, like with the fact that they've got Flegler on their books, and then not only that, like if Flegler doesn't work out, the Finns have to pay that out, right? Like they have to, it doesn't count against the cap, but they still have to pay out that. It takes up another roster spot, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I get it, but I'm still disappointed. The main, I think, update here is I got a lot of questions this week of like, how can the Bulldogs have like 3 medical specialists, neuro specialists saying he can never play again. Like they've signed things saying, release him from the contract. He can't even do contact training, is what they said. But then you've got Karl Oloapu's camp and the RLPA saying, no, he's fine. He's good to go. And I think this speaks for people who don't deal with this kind of stuff week in and week out. And you get a lot of this, I think, obviously at an athletic level, it can happen, but where it's super common, James, is like your work cover, insurance kind of areas.
Holy.
Yeah, where you've got these specialists over here saying, yep, this person's there'll be the work cover specialists, right? Who are like, this person's fine to go back to work, no concerns whatsoever. And then the person over here who's got the injury has got all their independent specialists who are like, nah, no way, can't do it. And so it just shows you that when you're dealing with injuries, it's not all as simple as like a broken bone, right? Where you can have a scan and it says the bone is broken or it's not broken. And that kind of is really clear. Something like this is very Karl Oloapu was he's the youngest kid by like 10 years that we've seen have this surgery in the NRL. Like that's how rare a situation it is. I've never come across a patient myself who's had this surgery so young. So it's just not, there's not necessarily a whole bunch of data that everyone can point to and is like, well, this is how it goes. So it is quite, they're going to be differing opinions. So that's where the uncertainty comes in. Is obviously the Bulldogs would go to people, because I think initially when Oloapu went to get the surgery, wanted get the injury treated, he had 2 specialists tell him to retire. They said, no, we can't operate on it. But then he went through Anthony Minicello's guy who said, yeah, no, I can sort you out, I've got you covered. So he'd already had 2 specialists tell him, don't even bother continuing with your career before surgery. So it just shows you and people it isn't without risk, him going back to footy, but it's just where on that risk plane does it sit is really hard. And where, if you said you're a 10% risk of, a serious neck injury, is that too much a risk? For Karl personally, is that too much a risk for a club personally? It's where does it sit? Yeah, it's a dog's breakfast, this kind of situation, because there's no hard and fast rules. It's going to be very subjective, in terms of different opinions, left, right, and center. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if a club takes a risk with him with all this stuff going on. I don't know if you strike too much of this in the hospital setting, mate, but yeah, I certainly see a lot of it, and it's super, super frustrating.
We see heaps of it, actually, Brien. I can think of, most of the people that I would see, because we're a persistent pain clinic, multi-disc, and we see a lot of people that have either been through that medico-legal vortex where it's this person, that person, this person, round and round and round. A lot of them will end up in, failed persisting pain sort of syndromes after surgery as well. So, the old terminology I used to use was failed spinal surgery syndrome. They've sort of gone away from that, because it's not very favourable to the people doing the surgery, to different sort of, pain diagnoses and things like that. But we see it quite a lot, isn't it? This Oloapu situation is just a medico-legal minefield as well. I guess it's club implication, it's Karl implication. And when you think about it, in terms of risk, how do you put a number on the risk, in rugby league with this sort of stuff? I don't know how you really quantify that. It's a little bit outside of my scope. But when you think about, young men in general across society, we generally do high risk activities, whether it's recreational stuff, whether it's sporting stuff, whether it's even occupational stuff as well. You look at, guys in the military, are they at a higher risk of serious injury than Karl Oloapu or not? You could argue it, couldn't you, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it. So there's a whole scope of, in this occupation, is it more risky than other occupations around there? I think you can make an argument truly each way. And I guess on top of that, you've got the situation of a young guy who has an ability to make, really quite significant money depending on his background as well. And he might have, family pressures. There might be, situational things for him that he can get his family out of, certain situations or lift them up high. That's huge as well. So there's this big burden on, Karl probably laying it on the line for the betterment of other people around him as well. So there's all this different dynamic. And I feel really bad for Karl in the middle, because he's probably getting pulled this way and pulled that way, and who knows how confident he is in himself and what sort of therapy he's been doing for himself and what his future prospects look like. If the NRL don't sign it off, does he go to Super League? Like, there's all these unknown questions, isn't there, Brian? And but we do know there are some people. I guess when I've been talking to people and they've said, "Oh, do you know anyone that's had spinal fusion surgery and got back to the game?" And I guess we came up with a little list before, Brian, didn't we? Just between us on people that have had it, that have had successful returns, because I guess it's not like it's just a never, never thing that's never happened. So I guess you can list a few names now, can't you? Of guys that have sort of been there, done that, and come back at a very high level to the NRL, can't you?
Yeah, so Mitch Barnett was probably the best example that we had. So he had it quite a few years ago, and I mean he's hitting heights like never before, right? Like he played Origin last year, he's absolutely killing it. There were guys like Joey Leilua, Charnge Nickel Cookster. Like he's probably, you could argue he's faded away a little bit, say this year, but last year, the year before, absolutely killing it. So it's the main difference with Oloapu is just his age. The fact, I mean, we've spoken about it before, the skeletal maturity side of things. Have his bones stopped growing and changing and those kind of things? But also, I think the main consideration outside of that skeletal maturity is like, for a lot of these guys who have these fusions at, in their late 20s, the fusion, the cage in the neck has only got to last maybe 4-6 years, something like that. For someone like Oloapu, conceivably that it's probably got to last like 12 years, like he's 19 years old, like he'd want to play till he's early 30s. So that, like, you'd want those, like the surgeon, to guarantee that cage in there is going to stay structurally sound for 12 years, like playing contact sport. And that's a real minefield. That is, like, can you guarantee it? So yeah, it's, as you said, it's a minefield, mate. Like, my heart goes out to Oloapu. I don't mean to laugh, but like it's just more laughing at just how, I guess, how convoluted it can get from side to side. But yeah, heart goes out to him. Hopefully, as we've said all along, hopefully he can get back safely and fine. But yeah, just hopefully his well-being is put number one.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that, Brian. The next one is a Dolphin as well. Or not Dolphin as well, but he's a Dolphin that we've listed a few times before, and that's Tom Flegler. Any updates on Tom and the shoulder rehab?
Yeah, mate, massive positive update we've got this week. So our good friend over at the Courier, I think, Pete Bedell, spoke to the Finns this week, and they've done the initial testing on Flegler. So they've kind of left, since the surgery, they've left the nerve, left everything, and just kind of let it do its thing. And they did the first round of testing this week, and it all came back positive. And by that, it means that the nerve conduction is improving, the strength seems to be improving. So there are positive signs. Now, and the Finns themselves have said, look, we're not getting ahead of ourselves. Like, this is the first stage. I think he's got his next lot of testing in April. So we'll get the next lot of sort of updates then. And as I've said, that the scary thing about this injury is you can see improvement to a point, and then it can just flatline, and that can be as good as it gets. So the Finns aren't getting ahead of themselves, but like, it hasn't flatlined yet, right? I think is the positive report here. So he's had his first lot of testing, and it's shown improvement in that time. So great, we're moving in the right direction. We just got to hope it keeps going that way. In terms of the earliest possible time, it's still like that July kind of range potentially, but even I think Christian Wolf said, look, like, kind of he's written it off as next year is best case for Flegler. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I've still, in my mind, as a Finns fan, as a physio who has some sort of knowledge on this kind of stuff, I've kind of put him at next year. I think a few people asking about draft leagues and these kind of things, he's not on any of my rosters, put it that way.
Yeah, fair call, mate. I did see him in a video with like an RLPA video, I think, or something like that, and it looked like noticeable sort of muscle definition changes on each side, for lack of a better word. I think especially sort of like traps and delts, especially. It was probably the one thing that stood out to me. I was like, oh, geez, there's still fairly, he's a big dude, right? There's a fair bit of sort of muscle asymmetry there. So he's going to hopefully still see improvements. And then the strength side of things is going to be reps and reps and reps and reps. And living in the gym there. So good luck to Tommy Flegler. That's really positive news, O'Brien, because that's a situation that's such an unknown. For the Storm, Ryan Paps he's been listed as touch and go with a knee concern coming into round 1. They do have the bye in round 2, Brian. So I guess we're watching and waiting for Ryan Paps on team list Tuesday. What are your thoughts on what's going on here? Do you think it's an exacerbation of the previous kneecap fracture, or are we dealing with something maybe intra-articular or, cartilaginous perhaps?
Yeah, mate, got sold up the river here by Bellamy. If you're to believe Paps himself, they've got a great new podcast. I think it's Paps, Cam Munster, Jerome Hughes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Paps. Yeah, so he spoke about the injury specifically. He was a bit filthy. He's like, oh, they were talking about my ankle and knees. Like, I've got no problems with my ankle. It was mainly just his knee, and the main problem with his knee was a stitch. Funnily enough, one of the stitches apparently didn't dissolve and calcified, and he's had some issues with it over time, just rubbing on the area. So that's the main issue at the moment, which for me is very not concerning at all. If that's actually what it is, we got in here last week and I said I was quite concerned. The fact that it was ankle and knee, all that kind of stuff. So once again, I mean, yeah, it's just the unfortunate situation we're in with coaches giving us mixed information or mixed truths to it, I guess, depending on what the coach has been told as well. But yeah, I'm at this stage backtracking on all my concern from Paps last week. I'm pretty happy that he's okay.
Good update there, mate, and a much better podcast than ours. Let's put it that way for those ones that people that haven't listened to that one before. Lastly, Justin Olam from the Tigers here, Brian. There's been rumours circulating that knee concern is pretty significant here as to whether he'll play a lot this year, or even medical trialment's been bandied about here in the media as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. By all accounts, he had a knee injury, ongoing, degeneration knee injury that he's been dealing with since Storm days. But they're saying that this one is a new knee injury to the other knee that he suffered late last year, and that might cause him to retire. I've had plenty of people hit me up, be like, "Oh, they're trying to rort it. They're trying to pass off this knee as the other knee, or whatever." But my thing is, when these guys go and get scans, they're getting scans at I'm from Queensland, so Queensland X-ray or Q Scan or iMed or something. They're all independent scanning places. They have Justin Olam in the system, right knee. So the NRL, you wouldn't be able to pull one over their eyes and switch it all and be like, oh, it's his right knee. They can't. That's not the part that they can fudge. There's plenty of other things, but they're not going to fudge one knee for the other one, effectively, is what I'm saying. So yeah, it doesn't sound good at this point in time. I had heard that he'd been struggling all off season. Another reason why my boy Adam Dewey is going to be the throbber of the year. So not sounding good. Will he get approved? Look, I've stopped. If there's unpredictable things in the game, it's definitely that, because there's been some guys, I think maybe Watmo back in the day approved, was a total shock with all his degen stuff in his knees. So yeah, complete roll of the dice. I don't think there's anyone out there who could predict whether he will get it approved or not. But I'd lean towards yes, because they've obviously confident enough that it is a fresh knee injury. But yeah, another medico-legal minefield a little bit, James.
Yeah, a few of them tonight, Brian. Let's launch into the questions then, mate. So the ones we're going to talk to are the ones that have been submitted through the socials there. So thank you for everyone for submitting your questions through the Magic Sponge. Brian, question number 1 is, does Jack Bird have a particular injury recurrence risk, I should say, or is he just injury prone at this point? What are your thoughts on that with Jack Bird?
Yeah, I think they're referring to is there particular areas where Jack Bird is at risk of injury, or is he just globally injury prone? And I mean, he's got that rheumatoid arthritis there, which can, I guess have implications on his joints and pain and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of injury, it's mainly his knee, because he's had, I want to say 3 ACLs. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was 3, not 4, is where I'm going in my head. So it just means that, in terms of injury risk, it's more degeneration, meniscus tears, these kind of things that come with past ACL injury. And also if he's had hamstring grafts, it increases his risk of hamstring injuries as well. So he's not someone who I'd shy away from an injury perspective, though. I think particularly from a classic standpoint, I think it's more for me, it's like what's his role rather than his injury risk at this point in time, because he's not trying to hit speeds like he used to, back out at center and those kind of things. He's more playing in the middle of the field now. He's probably not running as fast is what I'm getting at. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I know you're not a big Jack Bird guy this year, but are you doing that because you think he's particularly injury prone or more his role in the Tigers?
A bit of both, to be fair. So I think there's obviously injury concerns there and a long injury history. The other thing with his rheumatoid, Brian, as well, it does put him at risk for like muscular tenderness stuff as well with rheumatoid. I think there's a higher incidence of tendon-related pathology. So whether that's tendinopathy type things or tenosynovitis, inflammatory related things, I think that is a risk factor in RA as well. So you're probably at risk of soft tissue stuff on top. And then in addition, there is the role he is in that team and how does he fit? What does he play? How much gas does he have left in the tank? I think I'm just happy to take a role on someone else in the centre wing and second row spot. I think there's just higher upside guys to be had there in those positions would be my call there. Second question here, Brian, is are there any emerging rehab or surgery techniques that are becoming more commonplace from what you've observed during your time doing NRL Physio?
Yeah, I think the surgery techniques are mainly around like the use of tight ropes. So we hear a lot about tight ropes, which is like a thin band of surgical cord or synthetic cord that is put into, particularly with high ankle sprains, syndesmosis injuries, you get the tightrope surgery. So rather than putting a screw, which is like a rigid, obviously a very firm structure in through a joint that, that can cause some irritation and problems, you put this cord through, which provides stability, but also some flex as well, and you can leave it in there. So that's kind of moved on from, like you see it in high ankle sprains, but it's also used in things like Liz Frank injuries. So Kalen Ponga got his Liz Frank injury repaired via tightrope last year. Even AC joint sprains. One of the podiatrists at my work actually recently had a tightrope AC joint reconstruction. So that's starting to become more and more common. Our great friends at Arthrex are kind of the leaders in that space. They've got a lot of great videos and animated things that show us how those surgeries are working, which is fantastic. And then from a rehab perspective, I think the biggest thing, and this is probably not necessarily an elite NRL observation, but I'd say from a rehab perspective, it's going non-surgical for a lot of things. Like we've spoken on this show in the past about going conservative with ACL ruptures, so complete tears. That's definitely getting more and more common that, hey, let's avoid surgery. Let's give you a period of 10 weeks rehab and see how we go. And we're doing quite well. Even some Achilles ruptures, so complete Achilles ruptures. I know in a public setting, you can probably speak to this really, really well. Like it's pretty much standard to go no surgery with Achilles ruptures publicly these days, isn't it?
So for Achilles ruptures, as you mentioned, Brian, yeah, we would not see them get operated on very often publicly. There, from what I gather, majority are done non-operatively. Same thing goes for hamstring avulsions as well, and a few other ones. Sometimes even bicep tears as well on top there, Brian. So a lot of those tendon-based injuries, a lot of those ruptures, rotator cuff ruptures as well. There's a lot of them that get managed non-operatively primarily, rather than going down the knife. So the only other techniques I would say is the introduction of electrotherapy with like the athletes. So you're seeing a lot of guys come back quicker from tendon repair surgeries, especially. They're probably the two big ones that jump out to me, mate. Any other ones from your point of view?
No, that's about all I had too.
All good. Well, the next question, Brian, is I didn't see what this was, but you sent me a few photos here, and I don't know what's doing, but what the hell were the jillaroos breathing into before their game? What sort of thing was that?
Yeah, mate.
For the listener, how would you paint the picture here?
Imagine it's like what's about like a hot water bottle or a whoopee cushion almost. Like looks like a whoopee cushion with like a little tube off the end that you
almost.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Basketball, yeah. They're all a little bit different. So they're breathing in and out, kind of deflating and inflating this rubber bag that's underneath them. As you said, see them like we were talking about it off air, like you see them more in like ICU, like hospital kind of settings. But I think breathing has become a big performance thing that they want to address now. Like we see all the teams get in the huddle after scoring a try and they do the big All Blacks, breathe in and breathe out. And there's some, physios, rehab people who are so into breathing as like this massive thing now. Like, you have a shoulder problem. Yeah, okay, would do this treatment, but also let's sort out your breathing. How are you breathing? Are you chest breathing? Are you stomach breathing? Are you using accessory muscles? What are you doing? So breathing's a big thing. And I'm not saying that to shit on it or anything like that. It's just an area that I probably haven't looked into super, it's just really expanded. So I'd say it was some sort of breathing exercise to get your diaphragm and different muscles going before the game. Get some oxygen in there as well. But yeah, very, very strange, mate. Very, very strange.
It is a weird one, mate. I think the only thing I can speculate is maybe they're hyperoxygenating themselves. Maybe it's a relaxation thing. Maybe it's getting in the zone thing. I don't know. It's a weird one. Like you said, they're normally used in ICU for manual hyperinflation of the lungs for like secretion removal and stuff like that. So I don't know what's doing there. Probably just a big old placebo effect by the look of things, as a lot of these type of things generally are. So we might move on to the next one, Brien. So are there any risk issues after a latarjet surgery reconstruction besides re-dislocation?
Infection is the big one. After any surgery, you've got an infection risk. So that's and that can exist sort of moving forward. If you get a cut near the shoulder or something like that, you can then get infection in and around the screws that sit in there and those kind of things. So infection is something that exists moving forward. And the other thing is failure of the screws. We saw that with Michael Morgan, for example. Michael Morgan was forced into retirement because he didn't necessarily have another shoulder dislocation, but the screws that they use to attach the bone graft to the front of the shoulder joints in the latarjet shoulder reconstruction, those screws in Michael Morgan snapped. So when they snapped, obviously, you're in big trouble there. So yeah, they're probably the two main ones I can think of. In around that, but both rare, obviously. So yeah, not saying that they're super common, but definitely some risks there associated with any surgery.
Yeah, nice one. Last question, Brien. So is it possible to project injuries based on a player's history? So, for example, could you foreseeably project how many weeks Nathan Cleary would miss this year based on his injury history as such?
Not me personally. No, I know that there are some big data guys over in the States. And I talk about, I started this, NRL Physio whole schmozzle based off, saw what was going on over in the States in terms of physios and doctors and that kind of thing, commenting on injuries over there. I know there's a few big dogs who in the medical space have then teamed up with big stats guys. So, huge, guys who are, obviously I'm not a stats guy, I'm a physio guy. So that one I won't be able to help with the stats there, but yeah, combining those two, the data from the health professional and then working with the calculations of probability and all that kind of stuff and comparing it to past stuff as well. So, having past injuries there of, Cleary had a latarjet and has come back in X number of weeks. How does that compare to others? His injury history. So there is a way to do it. I don't know how accurate it is necessarily. But yeah, there is a way that it seems like those US guys, I don't know how successful it is either. But they do seem to have a way that they can attempt to do it. Obviously that's all the questions done. Now we'll head into SuperCoach Corner very quickly. Yeah, mate. So as our SuperCoach expert, give us look, everybody's been waiting for this, mate. Give us your SuperCoach team heading into TLT. Obviously, Team List Tuesday will bring a few curveballs for us in the form of, Adam O'Brien's probably got a couple up his sleeve. Todd Payton, even Trent Robinson, mate. He's going to come out and put Nafu White on the bench, play him 5 minutes or something like that, even though he's locked into my team. So hit us with your team heading into Teamless Tuesday and give us, I think, look, there's a lot of guys that we'll have who are very common, but I think we've got a few left field guys. So I think if you could really dive in on a couple of your heart picks or you guys who you think, yeah, look, I think this is a bit left of field or your point of difference plays, give us, let us know why you're doing those.
Sounds good, Brian, and I do agree on the coaching stuff there. There's going to be a lot of shithousery between now and then, so it should be good. Hookers, I've gone cheap, so Sandon Smith and Corey Pakes are the hookers there. It looks like Corey Pakes has got the inside running at the Bronx. Front rows, I think I've got the same as everyone. May, Horsburgh, Tino, and Ben Takuris. I've gone cheap there in that sort of fourth spot. In second row, I've gone Connor Watson, Liam Martin, Ben Turbo, Dave Fafita, Jack Goz, and maybe just a placeholder there in like Liam Hubner from the Bunnies. In terms of my thinking, Liam Martin I'm high on because of price. He saw 80 minutes today, scored 58. I'll take that. Connor Watson at hooker is there in case I'm really struggling and I can move him up into a hooker position. So that's why I've gone Connor Watson. Dave Fafita there is 2% owned. I just see his scores last year in a season where he only scored 4 tries or something like that. I just think he's unattractive because he's got the week 1 bye, but he could be really, really huge. And I've got Ben Turbo in and second row as well, because the beauty of him is you can interchange him between centre and second row, and you can find where the sheepies land for team lists. So I've got him in the second row in at the moment. He probably won't see the field. I've got everyone firing, but he's one that I just really want because I think his upside is there. Younger guy who's been a bit injury bit. Risk is built into that, obviously. Halfbacks, Nicho and Tom Duffy. We've talked about that earlier. 5/8s have gone a bit left of field here. It's a dire position, but I like Matt Burton, and I've got KO Weeks too. KO Weeks put up 33 this week. Not the best, not the worst. But Matt Burton, I feel like he might be just someone I can just plug in for the whole year. So I've gone that way because I feel like Munster will play Origin. I feel like most of the other options are fairly unattractive. Even Dylan Brown, I'm not a huge fan of. I just feel like Matty Burton might have the best floor of everyone. And he scored poorly at the start of last year when the Dogs were going terrible. And then when they started rolling, Matty Burton was pretty damn good. So I'm just trusting the Penrith robber coming out of that system into the Bulldogs and taking over and dominating Belmore and dominating the NRL. He's just got that sort of feel about him, that Bird, doesn't he? That you just want to be on him that year. He goes absolutely ballistic. In centre wing, so pretty similar to you here, Brian. So Ruben Garrett, Greg Marziu, I think everyone will have them set up. Same with Paju, Shibasaki, and Rob Toya, who might be sort of a placeholder there. The ones that are a little bit point of difference is Selwyn Cobbo and Jarrell Skelton from the Tigers there. So I've got them in my centre wing. So I feel better about that this year because last year I went bad at centre wing and it didn't work out for me at all. So I feel pretty good about those guys with a fairly decent high up. So Selwyn was the next one. So I like him in the Broncos. Rig looks good, contract year. I think he'll fly. And Jarrell Skelton is the other one there, mate. Fullbacks, Kalen, Turbo, and Iongi. Pretty self-explanatory, those ones, hey, mate. So that rounds out my team. I've only got 14 in the bank. We'll see how that goes. I guess I don't feel too bad after the Vegas stuff. How are you shaping up, Ryan? Tell us your squads. We've got a few similarities, don't we?
Yeah, mate. I think hooker and front row all the same. So yeah, big Tino guy in there. Second row, I've got your guy, Jaman Hopgood. For the moment, he's probably the guy who I'm least confident about because I think there's a red hot chance there's a 4-forward bench at Para. So if that comes out, he'll be dropping out for me for sure. He'll be the one who I'll kind of upgrade there. Seyfarth, I'm all over him. I just think him getting named captain, I think he's locked into 80 minutes on the edge for the Tigers there. I just think he's going to, average 50, 55 at worst. And he's just someone who I can just leave in there as like a solid, 15th, 16th, 17th kind of guy. Nafu White, I've got at the second row, obviously interchangeable with Tino, and Jack Goz, Kautoga, and Hubner for the moment. Halves, Cleary, and Nicho. 5/8, I went Metcalf and Munster, although I'll be honest with you, mate, you sold Matty Burton pretty well. I like, I know the Dogs have got a really good draw because I was eyeing off Kiraz before all that kind of injury stuff. So I know they've got a good draw to start the year. They should be a good side. That interests me a lot. That's something that you might have dragged me over on. Then in CTW, mate, I'm on. This is the one that's come into my side is Selwyn. I just think contract year. Yep, the rig's good. I'm there with you. So Selwyn's in. I've got Garrick, Selwyn, Greg Marzhew, and then my boy Adam Dewey, and then 3 cheapies in Purdue, Shibasaki, and Toya, and then Turbo, Ponga, Iongi. So probably my guys like, Cobbo's a bit left of field. Munster, I don't think a lot of people have potentially. And then I've got Hopgood there. Don't feel fantastic about it. So it is a pretty vanilla side at this point in time. I think there's probably going to be a couple of light heart picks thrown in there. I've had a Sarko in and out of my team a bit because now that the Bunnies have lost those guys, that softens the draw up a little bit from round one for the Finns as well. They play a lot of games early on in Queensland too. So, someone like an Asako or even a Herbie, it does interest me, but I'm always hesitant because I still am worried that the Finns are going to be pretty dog shit. So even though it's a good draw for a dog shit team, potentially, won't go all that well. So we'll see. But that's my team. Hopefully it finishes higher than yours. That'll be the most important thing. That's a wrap for this week, guys. If you like the pod, give us a review, recommend to a friend. This time next week, we'll be back and we'll be talking about all the injuries from 6 games. So we'll have a few more injuries to talk about. Mate, enjoy the week. We'll get to, and we'll also get to sit here and, hopefully we'll both boast about our teams winning a regular season game of rugby league, mate, which we haven't been able to do in a while. So, it's good to have the footy back, and we'll get you again next week. And as always, everyone, you know why you're here. Up the mighty, mighty Redcliffe Dolphins.